Hey friend, welcome back. I'm Denise, and today I want to talk about something that's been on my heart a lot lately: generational change, breaking cycles, creating something different for the generations that come after us. And I know that sounds big, it sounds heavy, but to be honest, I think it's something we all think about when we become parents, right? We look at our kids and we think, I want better for them. I want to give them something I didn't have. I want to break patterns that hurt me so they don't have to carry them. So let's talk about it. Not in some theoretical teaching way, but just real talk. What does it actually look like to empower yourself to create change? Not just for you, but for your kids, their kids, and beyond. Now get comfortable. This is just you and me, and I'm going to share what I've learned or what I've been learning, what I've been wrestling with, and what God's been teaching me about all of this. Okay, so let me start with my story because I think it'll make sense of where I'm coming from. I grew up in the Philippines, and like every family, we had our patterns. Some good, some not so good. Things that got passed down without anyone really thinking about it. Ways of thinking, ways of relating, ways of handling problems. And a lot of it was just what everyone did. It was normal. And then I moved to Italy. I got married, I had a daughter, and suddenly I'm looking at this little human and thinking, what am I going to pass down to her? What patterns am I carrying that I don't even realize? What needs to stop with me so she doesn't have to carry it? And it hit me. I have so much power in this moment, not just to raise her or raise a child, but to shape what she passes down to her children someday, to break cycles, to start new ones, to create something different. But here's the thing. You can't change what you don't see. You can't break cycles you don't recognize. And that's where the real work starts. So I started looking at myself, really looking, and it was uncomfortable. Because I started seeing things, patterns I'd picked up without realizing, ways I reacted that came from wounds I hadn't dealt with, beliefs I had about myself, about God, about life that weren't even mine. They were just handed to me, and I accepted them without question. And I realized if I don't deal with this stuff, I'm going to pass it to my daughter without meaning to, without wanting to. But I'll pass it down anyway, because that's how it works. What we don't heal, we hand down. And that actually really scared me because I don't want her carrying my baggage. I want her to have her own relationship with God, her own identity, her own strength, not built on my unhealed wounds. So I started doing the work, and to be honest, I'm still doing it. This isn't something you do once and you're done. It's ongoing. It's a process. It's a journey. And let me get really specific here because I think this will resonate with some of you. I'm a naturally affectionate person. I always have been, even as a kid. I loved hugs. I craved physical touch. I was that child who wanted to be held, to be close, to feel connected through affection. But my parents, they weren't affectionate. Not with each other, not with us kids, and it's not their fault. That's just how they grew up. That was the only way they knew. Affection wasn't something that was modeled for them. So they didn't know how to give it to us. And I remember even as a little girl feeling this gap, this longing for something I couldn't quite name. I wanted hugs. I wanted something to ruffle my hair. I wanted to hear I love you without it feeling awkward or forced. And now my daughter is 6 years old. the same age I was when I have some of my earliest memories. And I look at her and I cannot imagine not hugging her. I cannot imagine not telling her I love her every single day. I cannot imagine not being physically affectionate with her. But here's the thing that hit me. When I was her age, I don't have memories of those moments with my parents. I don't remember being hugged goodnight. I don't remember sitting on my dad's lap or, being said, I love you before going to bed. Those memories just aren't there. And that realization broke something open in me because I understood. My parents loved me. I know they did. They cared for me, but they didn't know how to show it in the way I needed. My mom took care of me. She did all the things a mother does for a child who needs to be cared for. She provided, she protected, she cared, she was there. And she's even told me that as a little girl, I always wanted to be carried. That's true. Always. I was the child who reached up with my arms wanting to be held. But growing up, we never said, I love you to each other. Not to our siblings, not to our parents. It felt awkward, uncomfortable. Saying those words, expressing emotions out loud, it just wasn't something we did it in our family. And here's what's interesting. When I got married, saying I love you to my husband, that felt natural, easy. I had no problem expressing love to him with words. With my family members, especially my parents, even as an adult, it feels so awkward. I can write it in a message. I can type the words, but saying it out loud, face to face, it's like there's this wall that comes up, this discomfort that I can't quite explain. And as an adult, I started noticing something else. Whenever someone hugs me, there's this deep satisfaction, this feeling of something being filled up inside me. And I thought, why do I crave this so much? Why does a hug mean so much to me? And then it clicked. That little girl who always wanted to be carried, she wasn't just wanting to be held physically. She was wanting connection, affectionate, that feeling of being loved through touch. And even though my mom cared for me in so many ways, that specific need, that hungered for physical affection, it wasn't fully met. But when I had my daughter, something shifted. I looked at her and thought, I don't want her to grow up feeling that gap. I don't want her to wonder, if I love her. I don't want her to feel awkward expressing affection. I don't want her to carry this pattern forward. So I made a choice. I decided that cycle stops with me, that she would grow up knowing without a doubt that she is loved, not just because I provide for her or care for her, but because I tell her, because I show her, because I hug her and kiss her and hold her and make sure she never has to wonder. And you know what? It was hard at first. Well, it wasn't really that hard because I was just doing something I never learned. I was giving something I never received. And some days I still have to be intentional about it. I have to remind myself that it's okay to be affectionate, that expressing love isn't awkward or weak or too much. But watching how freely she says, I love you, watching how she runs up for hugs without hesitation, watching how natural affection is for her, that's when I know I'm breaking the cycle. That's when I know the work is worth it because she's growing up in a different normal where love is spoken, where affectionate is given, where emotions aren't something to hide or feel awkward about. And that's not because I'm a perfect parent, or a perfect mother. It's because I chose to give her what I didn't have, to create something different, to break a pattern that's probably been going on for generations. And here's what I want you to hear. My parents weren't bad parents. They did the best they could with what they knew. And I'm sure I'm sure their parents did the same. But somewhere along the line, affection got lost. Emotional expression became uncomfortable, and it just kept getting passed down because no one knew how to change it. Until now, until me. Until I decided that my daughter deserves something different. Not because what I had was wrong, but because I know there's more. There's better. There's a way to love that includes words and touch and connection. And that's what generational change looks like. It's not about blaming the generations before us. It's about saying, I see what was missing, and I'm going to give it to my kids, even if it's hard for me, even if I have to learn it from scratch, even if I'm giving something I never received. And here's what I've learned so far. If you want to empower yourself to create generational change, there are some things you have to do, not in some, formula way, but these are the things that have made a difference for me. First, you have to be willing to look at yourself honestly. And I mean really honestly, not just the surface stuff or the surface stuff, the deep stuff, the stuff you've been avoiding, the wounds you've been covering up, the patterns you've been justifying. And this is hard because it means admitting that maybe your parents didn't get everything right. Maybe the way you were raised wasn't all healthy. Maybe there are things you need to unlearn. And for some of us, that feels like betrayal, like we're being disloyal to our, family. But here's what I've realized. Acknowledging that something wasn't healthy doesn't mean you're dishonoring your parents. It just means you are choosing to be different. And to be honest, if your parents loved you, they'd want that for you. They'd want you to grow beyond where they were, to heal what hurt you, to give your kids something better. My parents did the best they could, and I honor that. But I'm also honest that there were things missing, things I needed that they couldn't give. And acknowledging that doesn't make me a bad daughter. It makes me a good mother because I'm choosing to learn what they didn't know, to give what they couldn't give, to create what wasn't there for me. So I started getting honest with myself, with God. I started asking, what am I carrying that isn't mine? What beliefs do I have that aren't true? What wounds am I still living from? And I started writing it down, praying about it, talking to my husband about getting real about what needed to change. And then I had to do something that felt really challenging. I had to forgive. Not just other people, but myself. Because here's what I realized. I was carrying so much guilt and shame for things I'd done, mistakes I'd made, ways I'd failed, and I was letting that define me. I was living like a person who couldn't be trusted, who wasn't worthy, who had to prove herself. And I thought about my daughter growing up, watching me live like that, watching me beat myself up, watching me carry shame. What should she learn from that? That women carry shame, that mistakes define you, that you have to earn love. No, I don't want that for her. So I had to start believing what God says about me, that I'm forgiven, that I'm loved, that my past doesn't define my future, that His grace is bigger than my mistakes. And I had to start living like I believe that. And that's biblical, right? In Romans chapter 8, verse 1 says, there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. No condemnation. Not some, not a little, none. So why was I condemning myself? Why was I living under shame that Jesus already took? I had to let that go for me, but also for her, because I want her to grow up seeing a mom who knows she's loved, who makes mistakes and extends herself grace, who doesn't live under shame. That's what I want her to learn. And then I realized something else. I can't give her what I don't have. If I want her to have confidence, I need to work on mine. If I want her to have healthy boundaries, I need to set them. If I want her to know her worth, I need to know mine. If I want her to have a real relationship with God, I need to cultivate mine. And if I want her to freely express love and affection, I need to learn how to do that myself, even if it doesn't come naturally, even if it feels awkward at first, even if I'm, learning it for the first time as an adult. I'm not just raising her, I'm modeling for her. She's watching me, how I handle stress, how I talk about myself, how I treat my husband, how I talk about God, how I respond when things don't go my way, how I show love, how I express emotions. She's absorbing all of it. And that's both terrifying and empowering because it means I have influence, real influence, not just in what I tell her, but in who I am. So I started asking, who do I need to become so she can become who God created her to be? And that question changed everything for me. And here's where it gets practical because it's one thing to say you want to create change. It's another thing to actually do it. So I started small. I started paying attention to how I talk to myself, the words I use, the tone, and when I caught myself being harsh or critical, I stopped. I asked, would I talk to my daughter this way? No. Then why am I talking to myself this way? I started paying attention to the beliefs I have about, money, about success, relationships, and about what makes someone valuable. And I asked, where did I learn this? Is it true? Is it what I want my daughter to believe? And if the answer was no, I started challenging it, replacing it with truth. I started paying attention to how I handle conflict. Do I shut down? Do I explode? Do I avoid? And I asked, what am I teaching her about dealing with hard things? And I started working on responding differently, more healthy, more honest. I started being intentional about affection, about saying, I love you, about hugs and cuddles and physical touch, even when it's not really that it's unnatural. Sometimes when you are just too tired and you don't have to do that. I mean, you don't have the voya, the desire to do it, but I have to push myself because I knew that's what she needed and I knew it's what would break the cycle. I started paying attention to my relationship with God. Is it real or is it performance? Is it intimate or is it distant? Because I want her to know God personally, not just know about Him. So I had to make sure my relationship with Him was real, that I was pursuing Him, that I was letting Him transform me. And all of this is rooted in something Jesus said in Matthew chapter 7. He talks about building your house on the rock versus building on sand. And he says when the storms come, and they will come, the house built on the rock stands, but the house built on sand falls. And I realized what I'm doing right now, the work I'm doing on myself, that's building on the rock. That's creating a foundation, not just for me, but for my daughter, for her kids, for generations to come, my grandchildren, my great-great-grandchildren. I'm building something that can withstand storms, something that's rooted in truth, in God, in health, in grace, in love that's expressed, not just felt. So when the storms come for her, and they will, she has something solid to stand on, not just because I told her to stand on it, but because she watched me stand on it. And that's what generational change is. It's not about being perfect. It's about being intentional. It's about doing the work so the next generation doesn't have to. It's about breaking what's broken so they inherit something whole. And I'm not going to lie to you. This work is challenging. There are days I don't want to do it. It's because, I'm tired from work. Days I'd rather just, ignore the hard stuff and keep going. Days I'm tired, like I said, and, think, and why does it have to be me? Why do I have to be the one to break the cycle? But then I look at my daughter and I think, because if not me, then who? If not now, then when? I have the opportunity right now to change the trajectory of my family line, to say, this stops here. This pattern ends With me, this wound doesn't get passed down. And that's powerful. That's not just parenting, that's legacy. That's creating something that outlasts you. And here's the thing about generational change that I think is important. You're not doing this alone. God is doing it with you, in you, through you. In Philippians chapter 1, verse 6 says, "He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion." God started this work. The desire you have to break cycles, that's from Him. The awareness you have of what needs to change, that's Him. The strength to do the work, that's Him too. You're not pulling yourself up by your bootstrap. You're partnering with God. You're letting Him transform you. And that transformation doesn't just affect you. It ripples out to your kids, to their kids, to people you'll never meet. That's generational change. And it starts with you saying yes. Yes to the hard work. Yes to the healing. Yes to growth. Yes to becoming who God created you to be so your kids can become who God created them to be. So let me ask you, what cycle needs to break with you? What pattern needs to stop? What wound needs to heal so you don't pass it down? Maybe it's how you talk to yourself. Maybe it's how you handle money. Maybe it's how you deal with conflict. Maybe it's beliefs you have about your worth. Maybe it's your relationship with God. Maybe it's boundaries. Maybe it's perfectionism. Maybe it's people pleasing. Maybe it's shame. Or maybe, like me, it's learning how to express what's in my heart through words. And also how to express love in word, and not just in words, but also in touch, and how to create emotional connection in ways you never experienced growing up. Whatever it is, you have the power to change it, not because you're strong enough on your own, but because God is working in you, and He's faithful to complete what He started. And here's what I want you to know: this work you're doing, it matters, even when it's hard or challenging, even when it feels like you're not making progress, even when you mess up and have to start again, even when you're giving something you never received. It matters because you're not just changing your life, you're changing your children's lives, your grandchildren's lives. You're creating a new normal, a new foundation, a new legacy. And that's not selfish. That's not self-focused. That's one of the most selfless, loving things you can do. To deal with your stuff so they don't have to. To heal so they inherit wholeness instead of brokenness. To grow so they have a higher starting point when you did. To learn how to love in ways you were never taught so they grow up knowing love naturally. So keep going, mama. Keep doing the work. Keep being honest with yourself. Keep forgiving. Keep healing. Keep growing. Keep letting God transform you. Keep giving what you didn't receive, because what you're building right now, it's going to stand, not just for you, but for generations. Your kids will thank you. Their kids will thank you. People you will never meet will benefit from the work you're doing right now. And on the hard days when you're tired and you want to give up, remember why you started. Remember that little face watching you. Remember the generations that come after. Remember that God is with you in this, that He's for you, that He's working in you. You're not just raising kids, you're raising generations. You're not just living your life, you're creating a legacy. You're not just surviving, you're building something that will outlast you. And that's beautiful. That's powerful. That's worth every bit of the hard work. All right, my friend. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing the hard work. Thank you for being brave enough to look at yourself honestly and courageous enough to change. Thank you for giving your kids what you didn't have, even when it's tough. So don't forget to subscribe to this channel, drop a comment and tell me what cycle are you breaking? What are you creating for the generations that come after you? Let's encourage each other in this. And if this spoke to you, share it with another mom or your friend who's doing this work too. Let's build this community of women who are creating change, not just for themselves, but for generations to come. Now remember, you're not alone in this. God is with you. And what you're building matters. Talk to you soon, my friend. Ciao for now.